Now, you might wonder why I have this picture in the beginning of a session on skills for success in schoolwork and life, because it's a painting of my husband's. And I do think it's beautiful, and it gives me comfort to see it, but that isn't why I chose it. I chose it because a filmmaker and a friend of mine, Tiffany Schlane, chose it when she wanted to do a film about the teen brain. She saw this photograph on my husband, Norman Galinsky's website, and said, that's what I want. I want to animate it for the teen brain. Now, what I loved about that is that's not the usual view of the teen brain, is it? Dynamic, exciting, lots of connections being made, superhighways of connections. But how do parents see the adolescent or the teen brain? When I wonder about something, I usually ask, and I actually ask a nationally representative group of parents in the United States from 9 to 19-year-olds this question. If you had one word or one phrase to describe the teen or adolescent brain, what would that word be? Now I want you to guess. This is interactive. How many, just yell it out, how many of you think parents use positive words? What percentage of parents use positive words? 20%. Do we have anybody a lot higher? 30%, okay. Anybody higher than 30%? Right. Anybody lower than 20%? One person lower, 2 people, 3 people, 4 people. Okay, we have 4 of you who are lower than 20%. 14% of parents used positive words to describe the teen or adolescent brain. That's 3 out of every 5 parents who use negative words. Now, there are many challenges in growing up today. We all know them. We know that national proficiency in our nation's report card has gone down since the pandemic, and it's only about 1/3 across the score of 4th, 8th, 12th graders who have proficiency in reading and math. Too few young people are engaged in learning. It was 56% before the pandemic. During the pandemic, it dropped to 33%, and that's not unusual from other nationally representative studies. This is a standardized measure of engagement in learning in school. We also find that teachers are reporting that children are struggling with self-regulation. 84% of teachers say that self-regulation is worse. They're not just making that up, though. A population study in the state of Massachusetts showed that self-regulation or executive function had dropped pretty far during the pandemic and hasn't risen for 2 years since they've been measuring it. And mental health in the United States, and I know around the world, challenges are increasing. 42% of young people, high schoolers, who reported such persistent feelings of sadness or hopelessness that they couldn't engage in their regular activities, and that's up from 28%. Now, they're not the only people. This is more anecdotal, but I'll get to some data actually in a moment. Employers. My favorite thing at a cocktail party was to say, so, you're an employer, tell me about the new hires of the workforce. What do you think they said? Down, yes, down. The kids these days, have you heard that? The kids these days, we have to train them. They don't know how to work in teams. They don't know how to problem solve. Do you know how much money we spend training people? I think schools think that everyone should compete against each other, but we want people who can work with each other. Why aren't kids learning the things that they need to learn for life? My favorite cocktail party conversation, which in part precipitated about 24 years of studying this issue. What are we doing to turn the fire off in children's eyes has been my question. So I started with early childhood and spent close to 15 years looking at the research on that, interviewing, doing studies, and so forth. And then in 2015, turned to adolescence. I do civic science, which means that I always start with the people being interviewed. So I started with focus groups or individual interviews with 38, 14 to 18-year-olds, not just from the United States, from other parts of the world. And I asked them questions like, what do you want to know about your own development? Or if you had one wish that could improve the lives of people your age, what would that be? Or what should I ask researchers when I interview researchers? Because I was going on to interview researchers. And they said, why don't people like teenagers? Which is not in the literature, I might tell you. Not very much about it. And why don't people understand us? You were a teenager once. Why don't you understand us? So then I interviewed 45 researchers, not again just from the United States, but largely cognitive neuroscientists, but developmental researchers as well from around the world, and then did 2 nationally representative studies of 9 to 19-year-olds and their parents in the United States. And in the middle of that, I pulled out about 60 people from the sample and asked them the kinds of questions that come up when you ask a study and you want to keep, civic sciences iterative. You find out something and then you have more questions. And then we did a behavioral study of executive function skills. We did of 6th, 9th, and 12th graders in schools in 6 states. So let's go back to the question that I asked originally of this nationally representative group of parents. What do you think the most frequent negative word was? Chaos. 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 Other words? What? Confused. Okay. What? Slackers. Yes. Those are all words. Keep going. Immature. Well, you just win the prize. You do. Because actually 11% of parents, and that's a lot of people in a nationally representative open-ended question, right? 11% used the actual word immature, and another 8% used words that mean immature: undeveloped, unfinished, underdeveloped, mush, words like that. Not change words. Changing we coded as neutral. Now, we wouldn't say that a baby is an immature toddler, would we? I hope we won't. We wouldn't say that a toddler is an immature preschooler, but we do say that adolescents, a lot of us, 1 out of 5 of us at least, and 59% who use negative words, are saying that kids are not an adult. What they are is not an adult, which means that we don't really understand what they are. And I don't know about you, but if a group of people felt that I wasn't what I should be, that wouldn't feel very good. Now, granted, we ask about generic, the adolescent brain, the teen brain. But we found when we controlled for all kinds of things in this study, for the conflict that the parents and teenagers had, reported by the teenagers and reported by the parents, for the negative words that the parents used about their own children, we controlled for socioeconomic status, everything that we could control for. The parents who used more negative words about adolescents had kids that were sadder, lonelier. So if you were a researcher, you might think that now what the kids said made sense. Why don't they understand us? Because many of them are seeing not our strengths, but our deficits. This is a time of learning and exploring. No wonder 21% of young people want us to understand their development. We're smarter than you think. We're not as lazy as you think. Those kinds of words. This is civic science. So then we went back and did person on the street interviews, except for they're in a school. You'll see them in a moment. Let's listen to what Lisa Marie, 17, has to say about this.
I think that adults in my life aren't really aware of what I struggle with. As much as I try to communicate with them, it's hard. And I try to put myself in their shoes, but I feel like sometimes it's not reciprocated.
A second message, there were 5 messages, but I'm sharing 2 with you, was we want to learn, but we want to learn in ways that we learn best. Like, why are we learning some of the stuff that we're learning? It doesn't make sense. And why are we learning in not interactive ways, in ways that don't involve us? Let's listen to Amani, who's 15.
Sometimes when we make mistakes, it's kind of like it's the end of the world and not just like a mistake. I just think sometimes if they could put themselves into our shoes and just know that it was a mistake and that it's okay.
I think we need to reframe the whole notion of mistakes and understand that we all learn through trial and error. So what if, just what if, we knew of something that helped children learn and thrive? And usually we separate learning and thriving. We look at mental health and we look at academic success. We separate those, but they really go together. But what if there was something in the literature that helped children learn and thrive now, not you don't have to wait 20 years, 30 years, now and in the future? And we do know there is something. It's not a silver bullet, I want to say that very clearly, but is really an important lever, I think, that we should push. And those are executive function skills. Have you heard of executive function skills? A lot of people think of them as soft skills. They're not. They're the most neurocognitive skills we have. They are the basis of all learning. They're the foundation for anything we want to learn. And executive function skills are more predictive of success, academic success, mental health success, now in the future, even health and well-being in studies that have been long-term, longitudinal studies. They're more important for school readiness for those people in early childhood than entry-level reading and math. And yet, this is not something that we pay attention to. So what are they? They're attention regulation skills. What you pay attention to is what you learn. And under that umbrella are 4 foundational skills. One is using what you know, or working memory. Another is flexibility. Flexibility is really critical to our learning and thriving. Pausing, reflecting. It takes place in a different part of the brain, in the default mode network, but that's the toggle between the executive control system and the default network that we go back and forth, but we pause, and then we use self-control if we're trying to achieve a goal. So these are always goal-directed. And let's listen to Ashley, who's only 14.
My parents sometimes hold the leash too much. Eventually, I'm gonna grow, so maybe not just let go of the leash, but like walk with the leash. Kids suffer like when they're older, since they've been holding the leash for so long, like they're used to it and they're not able to expand and build upon other things.
I've been talking to young people all over the United States in the 3 months since my book has come out, and I ask them the questions that I ask in the study. And over they say things like Ashley, which is walk with the leash. Let us learn the skills that we are going to need. We know that our parents aren't always going to be with us. Let us begin to learn those skills. In fact, those core executive function skills are the building blocks for the skills that are going to be important in the future, like goal setting, like perspective taking, like communicating and collaborating, like problem solving, and not just being resilient, but trying that next hard thing and taking on challenges. Now, the interesting thing is we know how to do that. The research on executive function skills and how to translate them is now 20 or more years old, and there have been enough studies where we know how to help people do that. And one of the ways is what Ashley said, which is walk with the leash. In other words, be autonomy supportive. Don't fix things for kids, but help them learn how to fix things for themselves. Let me just give you one example. This is the research of Ethan Kroos at the University of Michigan. He was looking for a strategy for dealing with the hard things in life, for dealing with challenges. And he happened to be, as researchers, you never know when the aha moment is going to strike. He had been seeing that their executive function skills are really important, but sometimes they take a lot of brain power to be able to implement. And he happened to be listening to LeBron James on television. And he was figuring out whether he should take this offer or that offer. And he started to switch into the third person. He said, I asked myself, what should LeBron do? And Ethan Kroos went, that's it. Maybe if we think of ourselves not in the first person, but in the third person, or in a non-first person pronoun, we have some psychological distance. We can begin to step back, be that fly on the wall, go to the balcony, whatever it's called in the literature, and have more of a perspective on how to solve problems. So he gave this young man and many others the Trier social stressor test. You probably know it. It's very taxing. It's very scary. You've got to convince people your age who are, you're applying for your dream job, and you've got to tell them why you should get that job. In one group of young people, he said, talk about yourself and, what would I do? And then the other group, he said, talk about yourself in the third person. What would Ellen do? And what they found is not only did they make better decisions and were more convincing, but when they went to the brain, when they looked at brain scanning, what they found is that it takes place in a different network. If you're thinking about yourself, you might be using a threat challenge. Fight or flight, you're sort of reacting to stress, versus when you're looking at a network that deals with challenges when you go and you have some social distancing. Not too much, because we want people to be connected with their emotions. But we do know, there are so many studies that I found that show us how we can implement executive function skills. And it's what employers want. There are data. This is the National Association of College and Employers, and they do a yearly survey about what employers are looking for. The latest survey, they want problem-solving skills, because who knows when another pandemic might happen. You know, you just can't always rely on a multiple choice answer to a test. You might have to come up with something new. They want ability to work in a team, because teams are very diverse. They want a strong ethic, people who care, and they want analytic and communication skills is always up in the top. Businesses now are spending millions of dollars to teach these skills once people have entered the workforce. So my big idea is, what if we, parents, teachers, anyone in young children's lives, use the time where they're developmentally ready to learn these skills, which is in the early childhood years, and then it's in the adolescent years. We can learn them later, but this is a natural time. It's a sensitive period in brain development where we're more open to learning skills than another time. Now, if we did, just imagine if we did, then what life might be like. We might have people who could make democracies work. We might have better critical thinkers. We might have people who could solve the problems that we face in the future. We might even, my hope is, that if I did this survey, and again, and I will, we would have more people using positive words and fewer people using negative words, and we could understand these years for the breakthrough years that they really are. Thank you.